A memo circulated throughout the FDA this weekend, authored by Dr. Vinay Prasad, that might very well trigger the collapse of the U.S. vaccine program. Prasad is the head of the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research at the FDA, and what he just found regarding the COVID-19 vaccine is not just shocking, but criminal and evil. There's no other way to say it. What makes this even worse is that our public health officials knew. They knew that COVID was not deadly for young people and that natural immunity was stronger and more effective than the vaccine. Yet they did this to us anyway. Finally, and if you didn't think this could get any worse, think again. Reports are now surfacing that they might have even known about the dangers to children during the trials, even before these mRNA vaccines hit the public. Let's get into it. But before we do, and as always, guys, please make sure you are subscribed to join me in this fight to keep America one nation under God. We pursue God first to remain in truth and on the path toward who we could be in this life. Make sure to also check out the God First apparel line, branded and owned by God. That is the only place that I want to be, and that is the thought process behind this line. Check that out. I'm Zach Costello. Dr. Vinay Prasad circulated this memo throughout the FDA addressed to Team CBER, which is the Center for Biologics and Evaluation Research, which he is the head of, and states that he is writing to report that OBPV, which is the Office of Biostatistics and Pharmacovigilance staff, have found that at least 10 children have died after and because of receiving the COVID-19 vaccination from vaccine-induced myocarditis, and that young, healthy boys and men, those least likely to experience bad COVID outcomes, bore the greatest risk. And they knew about this safety signal in 2022. And that's an important date because of what you're about to see here in a second. But Prasad writes that this is a profound revelation. For the first time, the U.S. FDA will acknowledge that COVID-19 vaccines have killed American children. Healthy young children who face tremendously low risk of death were coerced at the behest of the Biden administration via school and work mandates to receive a vaccine that could result in death. In many cases, such mandates were harmful. It is difficult to read cases where kids aged 7 to 16 may be dead as a result of COVID vaccines. Even worse, and as this video goes along, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse, is that they knew about this. They knew about this safety signal and risk the vaccine posed to young boys and men, and they knew that this group had a very low risk of adverse side effects from the COVID virus itself. Yet, Tony Fauci, Rochelle Walensky of the CDC, and our public health officials pushed it on us anyway. Here is Dr. Paul Offit, who was a member of the FDA Vaccine Advisory Committee and CDC Advisory on Immunizations, who was part of these policy-making decisions, admitting just that. Listen to this.
In February of 2022, I was asked with 3 other immunology virology types to participate in a conference call about whether or not natural infection should count as a vaccine. In other words, for those areas that were still mandating vaccine, which was many in early 2022, whether they should be able to say, look, here, I was naturally infected here. This should serve as my vaccine card. And that meeting was held with Rochelle Walensky, Tony Fauci, Vivek Murthy from Surgeon General's office, and Francis Collins, and then me and 3 other immunology virology types. So he started off. He said, "Oh, let's introduce ourselves." So Tony Fauci says, I'm Dr. Tony Fauci from NIID, and then Rochelle Walensky says, "I'm Rochelle Walensky from CDC." I said, "We know who you are." And the question is, who the hell are we, right? Yeah, Tony didn't need to introduce himself. In any case, so we voted on it, and it was sort of 2-2, basically. I mean, I was one of I think natural infection should count for obvious reasons. I mean, actually, you're making an immune response to all 4 viral proteins. You, in many ways, make a broader cytotoxic T-cell response. I think you're better off in many ways. The problem with natural infection is it's misnamed. It should be called survivor-induced immunity because not everybody lives with a natural infection. So,
yeah,
that was. I wish we had then immediately gone to the press and said, look, here's the conversation we just had. Here's the conversation that we went back and forth on this. Because while we all basically agreed, I think that it should count, that the question was bureaucratically, would it work at a time when people could just go on the internet and say, look, I've been naturally infected and get out of it. It's just, it became more of a bureaucratic issue. So I saw Dr. Fauci at a meeting maybe a year ago or so, because I was already getting out there saying, I think we should target high-risk groups, where I was getting a lot of pushback from public health people who felt that I had gotten off the bus. Because, see, that was the whole feeling in this. You're either on the bus or off the bus, and there was no in between. So I'd gotten.
Yeah.
I said, Tony, am I wrong? Am I wrong in making? He said, no, you're right. We should target high-risk groups. He said, the problem is, the minute you say that, it becomes a nuanced message. And a nuanced message is a garbled message. If you really want to make sure those groups get vaccinated, then you recommend it for everybody. And okay, so if we think that, we should say it. Because my personal thinking on this is, then if that's the reason we're vaccinating healthy 16-year-old boys, that's not a good reason. And just have it open, say it openly. You know what I'm saying? Because I think people are smart enough to hear it.
And now, to make matters even worse, Alex Berenson reported and published that he was going to continue to scream this from the rooftops, and I will too, that a child died in Moderna's clinical trial of its mRNA COVID vaccine, and the company hid the death from the public. This report is not one of the 10 that Prasad reported by the FDA. Berenson is reporting here that a preschool-aged child died of cardiorespiratory arrest after getting a booster shot of the Moderna mRNA COVID vaccine during the company's main clinical trial, and the company covered it up. This is a report that has not been confirmed by the FDA. Would they confirm it? I don't know. But what we do know is this: these COVID vaccines were pushed, in a lot of cases forced, on so many of us. They fear-mongered people into believing that if they didn't get vaccinated, they were a danger to their family members, neighbors, and community. If you ever want to go back to work, church, or school, or ever just see anyone again, just get the vaccine. They're safe and effective, they said. They lied. And it's not just about the myocarditis in young boys and men. That is the problem. Remember, back earlier this year, when the same Alex Berenson reported that top Yale scientists found T-cell exhaustion and prolonged spike protein production in a high percentage of COVID vaccine recipients. Well, Chris Cuomo just put out an interview with Dr. Paul Soon-Shiong, who also interviewed with Tucker Carlson. I covered that as well. He is finding that these spike proteins, he's finding them in cancer tumor biopsies. Listen to this.
When you look in tumors, what are you seeing?
There's now evidence that when you actually biopsy the tumors, there's the spike protein inside those tumors.
From COVID.
From COVID.
And then there's what happened with Jim Johnson. In 2022, he'd survived his HPV-related cancer for 7 years, and he'd taken the COVID vaccine. Then his doctor gave him some shocking news. The cancer was back with a vengeance.
First person that they know of on the planet that had HPV metastasize onto his liver.
And they didn't know why.
Had no idea why.
This is why I worry when I'm now seeing 10-year-olds with colon cancer. I had a 13-year-old died in a clinic with pancreatic cancer. I'm seeing a lady who was very close to me who had a thymoma 30 years ago, never had remission for 30 years, got COVID, and now it's got metastasis.
I've said this many times, and I'm going to finish with it here. The decision to not get the COVID vaccine is aging like the finest of wines. Not giving it to my kids, probably an even better decision. But Candace Owens said something along the lines last week that we cannot continue to live in a world where governments hide the Epstein files, protect pedophiles, and decide to assassinate individuals to silence them, referring to herself and Charlie Kirk. She said it doesn't work. Add this to the list. We cannot live in a world where governments manufacture diseases and then vaccines that destroy our bodies and minds. It doesn't work. I'm Zach Costello.